as a country, we're facing a constitutional crisis. Our elected officials in the government are actively working to censor, silence, and even smear people who disagree with them.
The whole thing is very sketchy. First of all, the group Center for Countering Digital Hate is actually a hate group by every definition. It's also foreign funded. It's funded by dark money, but it's all foreign. It was started by high-level officials in the British government who probably almost certainly have ties to the British intelligence agencies. And then the people who run the organization are very, very sketchy individuals who've been, skirting the law for a long time and involved with a lot of nefarious activities. It's interesting because, a lot of people have been concerned in this country, and particularly high-level officials in the Democratic Party, have been concerned about Russian interference with American elections. Well, here you have a foreign government, directly censoring critics of the administration, and the administration admittedly taking its cues from a foreign government that wanted to censor people. So there's a lot of ironies here and a lot of disturbing paradoxes. As far as we've been able to tell, there has never been a candidate who applied for Secret Service protection to whom it was denied. I am the first. It was an historical event, and it was clearly a political choice. It was not based upon a threat assessment. It was clearly based upon a political calculation, and that, I think that is that's disturbing. As president, I will cut off all federal benefits and federal contact with banks that are punishing people for political beliefs, that are denying them access to institutional banking services because of their political beliefs or because of their political statements. It's wrong, and it's kind of the ultimate weapon of totalitarian regimes. The polling shows, as I think my favorability rating's better than any other candidate. So, there's a lot of challenges, but I'm very, very happy with the way things have gone.
Bobby, it's good to be with you again. The last time we connected on a podcast, on the Zoom, you were just about ready to announce your candidacy, and now you're in the midst of running your campaign, going through all the different strategies you have of connecting with these different podcasts. And congratulations on your successes and hitting some of the major platforms. Seems like you're really making a dent. Are you pleased with your results so far?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting tremendous traction, and the polling shows, as I think my favorability rating's better than any other candidate. So, there's a lot of challenges, and, we need to get through the barrier of the DNC and the Democratic Party. But I'm very, very happy with the way things have gone up to now.
Okay, great. So, as a country, we're facing a constitutional crisis. Our elected officials in the government are actively working to censor, silence, and even smear people like yourself who disagree with them. So I'm wondering if you were surprised to find emails from the Biden administration actively working to censor you on only their second day in office.
Yeah, Judge Doty's decision was this very, very alarming, I would say, troubling chronology that shows that the Biden administration began detailing these emails that have now come to light during the discovery process in Missouri versus Biden. And that case, Joe, was brought by two attorney generals, by the Louisiana attorney general and by the Missouri attorney general. And we then, I had a separate case against President Biden called Kennedy versus Biden. And the judge then incorporated our case into Missouri versus Biden. Judge Doty's decision came down about 6 weeks ago now. It's a 155-page decision, and it details this very troubling chronicle of the Biden administration coming into office 37 hours after President Biden took the oath of office. The White House was contacting Twitter and other social media sites, urging them to, actually threatening them with retaliation if they did not remove me from their platforms. And they were doing that. They soon after that, they started going after many other people, including you and many of the other people who were criticizing some of the COVID lockdowns and some of the countermeasures at the public health agencies and that the White House had implemented. And, it's disturbing. They weren't only censoring medical information, and they had to make up a new word because so many of us were putting up information that they couldn't actually call misinformation. But in fact, Facebook and Twitter pushed back and said, this is actually true what these guys are saying. They couldn't call it misinformation or disinformation. So they invented a new word called malinformation. And that word denotes statements that are true, but nevertheless inconvenient for the White House or the government. And they weren't just censoring statements about COVID policies, COVID countermeasures. They began soon after that. They began censoring critics of the Ukraine war. They began, in fact, in one instance, they were censoring statements, a satire about President Biden and his wife. And so it's really, it's something that the U.S. government, this should be shocking to every person, regardless of your political party. The U.S. government should not be using its power to force publishers to silence its opponents or its critics or its adversaries or people who question government policies. That's why we have the First Amendment. And the threat that the White House was applying was that if the social media sites did not comply, that did not obey the orders to censor us, that the White House would work at removing their Section 230 immunity. That's Section 230 of the Communications Act, and that immunity is absolutely critical to the business survival of these companies. What it does is it gives social media platforms immunity from defamation lawsuits. In other words, if you were to publish a defamatory statement about me in the New York Times that was not true, that was damaging to me, I could sue you individually, but I could also sue the New York Times. And so the New York Times, every article that goes up on the New York Times, there are lawyers who review that article for potentially defamatory statements. But the social media sites, if they had to hire a lawyer to look at every post, they would be out of business overnight. And so Congress gave them this extraordinary power that, they can publish defamatory material on their site, and I can sue the guy who wrote that material, but I can't sue Mark Zuckerberg or Facebook or Twitter. And Mark Zuckerberg has described the Section 230 immunity as existential. In other words, Facebook could not exist without that. Well, the White House was threatening to withdraw that. In other words, we will destroy your company if you do not censor our critics. And that is, that stepped over a lot of boundaries that I cannot think of at any time in American history of another example of just a direct attack on the First Amendment of our Constitution.
Well, thank you for answering that. And I think the justification for many of these actions was a result of the front group for the global cabal called the Center for Countering Digital Hate, who released a report that stated the disinformation dozen was responsible for 2/3 of the disinformation. Now that the Republicans are in control of Congress, they've been able to subpoena this group, and it's going to likely reveal the illegal nature of how they operated. So we got the Department of Homeland Security using this report in cooperation with the FBI and CIA to name us as domestic threat actors. How do you feel about that?
Well, the whole thing is very sketchy. First of all, the group Center for Countering Digital Hate is actually a hate group by every definition. It's a group, and it's also foreign funded. It's funded by dark money, but it's all foreign, and it probably was. It was started by high level officials in the British government. Initiated it, who probably almost certainly have ties to the British intelligence agencies, and they. The money was coming through it's definitely foreign money. It's probably foreign government money or, money that was instigated by government pressure. And that is another kind of interesting thing. And then the people who run the organization are very, very sketchy individuals. Who've been, skirting the law for a long time and involved with a lot of nefarious activities. But it's interesting because, a lot of people have been concerned in this country, and particularly high-level officials in the Democratic Party, have been concerned about Russian interference with American elections. Well, here you have a foreign government, directly censoring critics of the administration, and the administration admittedly taking its cues from a foreign government that wanted to censor people. So it's not, there's a lot of ironies here and a lot of disturbing paradoxes. I look forward to, I think Jim Jordan has a committee that's now investigating. Incidentally, they were saying, you're a member of what they call the disinformation dozen. And I think you are the number one member and I may be the number two member
right.
of that august group. But, they're really, if you look at the people in that group, they're all people who are essentially professional truth tellers. They're people who have been, critics of the pharmaceutical industry, but people who are pretty rigorous about fact checking and about citing and sourcing their materials. So they're not disinformation. They're literally information providers and much more reliable than the mainstream media. But this Center for Countering Digital Hate said that 65 or 75% of the misinformation about vaccines on the internet comes through these 12 voices. But when Facebook actually applied its algorithms to that statement, what they found was that I think it was less than 0.75, so hundreds and hundreds of times less. That if you assume that everything that all of us said was misinformation, and added it all up, it is a tiny, tiny sliver of a fraction of the vaccine information that's on those internet sites. Oh, even Facebook said this is just a lie, and they publicly said that. But nevertheless, Congress applied, Congress treated it as if it were true, and the mainstream media treated it as if it were true. And you and I have been libeled, I would say, tens of thousands of times across the media globally because of the false statements of this group.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens from this. It'll be really interesting to see how it unfolds. Now, you've been in the media quite a bit recently for your request to the Biden administration for Secret Service protection, which you appear to qualify, but Biden administration is denying you. So I found this somewhat curious because the Secret Service is part of the Department of Homeland Security, and they work with the CIA and the FBI. And knowing the history with your father and uncle, I'm just wondering how much you can really trust the Secret Service with your protection.
Well, when we dealt with the Secret Service, I had a private security firm, which is Gavin DeBecker Associates, which is one of the leading security firms in the country, that has been providing me some protection. And they also made the application to the Secret Service. They advised the various federal enforcement agencies on personal security issues. Gavin DeBecker, who owns the company, is the CEO of the company, is probably the world's foremost expert on personal security. He's written multiple books and multiple bestsellers, including The Gift of Fear. He's written analysis of every public assassination in the history of the world, the physics of each of those, and that the information that he has put together is used by every enforcement agency in the federal government. And he put together, or that group put together, a 65-page report detailing the unique threats to me, historic threats, and then contemporary death threats. I had a death threat 2 weeks ago that impeded one of our. It was apparently. It appears to have been calculated to try to shut down one of my rallies in Charleston, South Carolina. It was received by the venue right before I spoke there, and some of the employees of the venue then, felt very uncomfortable working at the event for fear. And I about 3 weeks ago, a month maybe now, I had a mentally ill person come to my home. I get to the third floor. I have stalkers, and that I deal with on an everyday basis, literally every single day. And then I get death threats quite often. So, and because of my family history, all of this was part of this 65-page addenda that was sent to the Secret Service. And when DeBecker dealt with the Secret Service, he described them as incredibly cooperative, as incredibly encouraging. They seemed to believe that I was entitled to the protection and that I would have it. And they told him that that we would get a preliminary visit within 10 to 14 days. Cheryl and I would, and that they believe that the application should be approved. Now, here's how it works. After my father's assassination, Congress passed a law that all political, that the major candidates for political parties, and they have to hit a threshold. I think it's 15% for a month, which I surpassed for a long, but by far, that they are entitled to Secret Service protection 120 days before the general election. However, the president has the discretion to give it to people at any time, and not just presidential candidates. John Bolton, who retired many years ago from the government, continues to have Secret Service protection. Many, many other people do. My uncle was given Secret Service protection for, I think, almost 500 days prior to the election, even when he was not even a candidate. And he was given that protection by President Carter, with whom, he had a very adversarial relationship, and he ended up running against President Carter, and they didn't like each other. But President Carter, was a classy person and did what he should have done, which is to provide Teddy with protection. Barack Obama, I think, got it 500 days early. Shirley Chisholm, Jesse Jackson got it early. John McCain was offered it early. I think there's probably about 20 or 30 candidates who've been offered it early in recent history. And there's, as far as we've been able to tell, there has never been a candidate who applied for it, for Secret Service protection, to whom it was denied. I am the first. This is, it was an historical event, and it was clearly a political choice. It was not based upon a threat assessment. It was clearly based upon a political calculation, and that, I think that is that's disturbing.
Thank you for that. I want to shift back now to the progressive move towards totalitarianism, and especially implemented not only from the social media, but now the financial institutions. And I want to thank you for passing out our tweet a few weeks ago that announced that Chase Bank debanked us. So this seems to be an evolving move that they're doing now, and it seems to be the precursor for movement into social credit scores like they have in China, more financial censorship. So what would you do to prevent more people from succumbing to being debanked, which can only lead to tighter financial controls?
Yeah, I mean, as president, I will end this practice by the banks. I will make it clear that banks to cut off all federal benefits and federal contact with banks that are punishing people for political beliefs, that are denying them access to institutional banking services because of their political beliefs or because of their political statements. It's wrong, and it's it's kind of the ultimate weapon of totalitarian regimes. We saw this happen in Toronto with the truckers when during those protests. The truckers' protest in Canada during COVID was a peaceful protest. It was, if you look at the videos of it, it was like Woodstock. There was clearly false flag events going on during that protest where government, where somebody was trying to frame the truckers, by they had a man who was in a baklava, with military boots on, who was carrying a Confederate flag among them, and the truckers ran them out. And the truckers were a very diverse group. There was blacks, whites, Asians, everybody in there. It was very peaceful, kind of a joyous celebration. And they had garbage pickup crews. They were taking care of people who didn't have enough to eat. It was really this extraordinary demonstration of community and social responsibility. And they were in Ottawa to protest the removal of rights that in the United States we take for granted, including the rights to petition your government, the rights of assembly, the rights to criticize your government. And the government of Canada under the Trudeau regime used surveillance techniques, including facial recognition systems and other techniques to capture the license plates of the truck, to identify their owners, and then to freeze all their bank accounts. And so all the leaders and the participants in the protest all woke up one day and their bank accounts had been frozen. These are people who had not violated the law. They weren't charged with violating the law. They were never convicted. And yet suddenly they found themselves in a position where they could not pay their bills. They couldn't buy gasoline. Their credit cards didn't work. They couldn't feed their children. I talked to one trucker who was in criminal trouble because he couldn't pay his alimony. They couldn't pay their mortgages, and they couldn't pay their rent. And so, if you have a government, it occurred to me then that transactional freedom is as important as freedom of expression, because if you have a government that can essentially starve you to death and put you out of your home, you can easily make an entire society a slave society if you have that power over them. And you're right. In China, they have not only, they've used central bank digital currencies and made them programmable so that if your social credit score drops below a certain number, for example, if you're seen by a facial recognition camera during a mandatory mask day, and your mask is below your nose or something like that, then you lose social credit score points. And you then, if you drop below a certain point average, and then the government can shut off your money, and it's programmable. So they may say to you, well, we're going to make it so your credit cards will only work at grocery stores within a certain periphery or diameter, from your house. And but they're not going to work we're not going to let you buy gasoline. We're essentially putting you under house arrest. You're not going to be able to buy an airplane ticket. You're not going to be able to buy any luxury items or anything other than maybe food. And if the government has the power to do that to you, then it really has ultimate power over all of us. And so, and that's one of the things that I've been fighting against, the issuance by the United States, which is now moving toward a central bank digital currency, to try to get a current to eliminate paper dollars. And in that case, every transaction that you make, if you buy a porn magazine, if you buy alcohol, whatever you do, the government is going to know about it. And you will be subject to blackmail or subject to pressure. And it's really it's a calamity for human rights and for civil rights. And so, as president, I will end the efforts to move toward a central bank digital currency. I'll do everything I can to maintain the paper cash as legal tender in this country, and to make sure that we're committed to doing that forever. And that is part of our that Americans know how basic it is to their rights. And then, there's other alternatives like Bitcoin, which give you even a better protection than cash. And it also gives you protection from inflation and and all of the other hazards that come along with fiat currencies.
Have you ever considered integrating the state banking system into the equation? Now, currently in the United States, we only got one state that integrates that, and that's North Dakota. But it seems like a really novel workaround for these gigantic, nefarious global financial institutions.
But what are you saying?
State banking system, where they essentially don't create debt, they loan it out to people and they pay it. It bypasses the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, I mean that's one. One of my objectives when I get in there is to get the Federal Reserve under control, to make sure that we now, we restore sovereignty of the American people over our money supply, that we have transparency. There's a lot of different options that we're looking at that right now, that I'm involved looking at. We're talking about them with leading economists around the country, people like David Stockman, like Jeffrey Sachs, like Jeff Werner, many, many, many other experts in that area, to try to figure out. A lot of people have really good ideas about how to get the Fed under control, and we're going to do something. We're going to do something about it. I just don't know exactly what we're going to do, and that, what you offer there is an interesting option that I need to run by our economics team and put in the mix.
Yeah, Ellen Brown has done a lot of work on that. She's actually written books on it, so I can connect you if you're interested. So I want to congratulate you also for Meryl Nass's tremendous work on the World Health Organization's plan, on the One Health plan, to essentially strip us of our sovereignty and give them complete control of not only assessing if a pandemic is going to happen, but what needs to be done, so they have total authority over it. And Bill Gates, of course, is behind this, and he's the largest funder of the World Health Organization through himself and Gavi. I'm wondering if it's time for all of us to demand less taxes and less support for the federal and global governments and more individual empowerment.
Well, I'm not going to raise taxes. I'll probably shuffle the tax burden around. I'll probably bring back the child tax credit and some of these other innovations that favor the small business and the middle class and child care, et cetera. I think the big issue that you and I completely agree on is sovereignty, that we need local sovereignty, that, we need to move away from centralized control and particularly any control institutions like the WHO that are not subject to, to U.S. control. It's an insane idea. And as you said, Bill Gates has taken over control of WHO, and it's become his vessel for what he calls philanthrocapitalism, which is a way of making a lot of money by controlling these international institutions that make public health policy. And for example, to get the WHO which funds most of the African health departments, to use its power and leverage over those departments to mandate vaccines for the children in those countries, and those vaccines are made almost invariably by companies in which Gates has a private financial interest, or which his foundation has a private financial interest. It was the same thing that he did with the Green Revolution in Africa. He got African countries to switch from traditional agriculture that has been around for 20,000 generations, from sorghum and barley and cassava and Latin America, yucca and plantains, etc., and switch it to GMO monocultures. And with this idea that this is part of globalization, that will bring big corporations in who will buy your products, give you cash, and lift everybody's standard of living up. That was the promise, but exactly the opposite happened. Gates did bring in the corporations that he owns, Coca-Cola, to buy the corn syrup, and Kraft cheese, and McDonald's, which he was by default one of the biggest shareholders, and Monsanto and Cargill and all these other corporations to build the infrastructure for these GMO products, to build the supply chain, and then create those products and sell them to U.S. corporations. And it's been an absolute calamity for the people of Africa. And I think there's 30 million additional people who have become food insecure as a direct result of Gates's Green Revolution. And but Gates and his companies have made a killing on it, literally a killing. And And so that he's applied the same thing to, Microsoft Word, by giving it away with his core curriculum to schools and making and training a generation of children who will be future Microsoft customers. Well, in each philanthropical effort that he makes, there's always at the end of it some money-making scheme for Gates and his foundation.
Okay, so closing things up, want to mention that we have a wide spectrum of people on our site with different varieties of political opinions, including those who are some pretty hardcore conservative Republicans. But there's just simply no question that if you have any critical thinking skills left, that you're going to want Bobby to be the Democratic nominee. I mean, there's no other rational candidate. He's smart, he's honest, he's incredibly healthy, he works hard, and he's aligned with many preventive strategies that can help everyone in this country take control of your health. So along those lines, a few weeks ago, you had a viral video that the world saw you doing push-ups, and it went widespread. So with all of these questions, and actually, I think one of your interviews with Russell Brand, he challenged you to a pull-up contest, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't know if you participated in that interview.
I regret that. No, that we're almost, he had to raise a certain amount of money, and then I said I would do it. So,
okay.
We're about to, I think we're almost there.
Well, good. So, because, it's questionable if Biden does have enough mental fitness to be president. I think it's important to know that most Americans know you're in good shape. So I think we could do something similar. We're both 69 years old, so we're the same age. And we could do something similar to Russell, but not copy him with pull-ups. We'll do something a little different and just do simple arm wrestling. So if we agree to raise $250,000 to support your campaign, you're going to arm wrestle me. Is that true?
Yeah, but let me ask you just something honestly. Are you a ringer in this area? Is this something that you've done before?
Well, I've done it once, but I do train quite a bit, and I do a special type of physical training that involves blood flow restriction training called KATSU. So it trains the type 2 muscle fibers. So my muscle fibers are really well trained for this type of event.
Okay, so there's a very good chance I'm going to lose this. All right.
Very good. I beat people up. One time I did it. I beat a guy that was about 30 years younger than me and much more muscular. So
well, I admire you a lot, Joe, because you've been giving people health advice for many, many years and health products, many of which I use. I use your liposomal C every day and a lot of other of your vitamins. And, you are obviously, you're one of these guys who gives medical advice, but you also live it. You're a very, very healthy guy. And I think that's good for all of us. One of the things that I'm going to do when I get in the White House is to rejuvenate my uncle's presidential council on physical fitness. And
I remember that. Oh, I was in grade school, or maybe high school. High school. Yeah.
It was a really big thing when we were young, and it was wonderful and if you look at the old films, which are out there of the way the kids looked back then, and the performance that they were doing. It's almost unbelievable how good a shape they were in compared to today's kids. And we now have the sickest children in the world. We have the highest chronic disease burden of any country in the world, and our kids are at least 54%, probably over 60%. Have lifetime chronic diseases. And, one of the ways to deal with that is to focus on your physical health and your diet. And these are things that, of course, the pharmaceutical industry and their captive regulators just want to use For them, it's a sick population is an economic boom. And you know, we now have the highest healthcare costs per capita of any country in the world, $4.3 trillion. 3.7 trillion of that is for chronic disease. So, you know, 80 or 90%. And if we can reduce those chronic disease rates, we reduce our healthcare costs enormously. And I want to do that. So yeah, I'm happy to take that.
Great. Yeah, I remember when I was in medical school, the healthcare costs nationally was less than 2 trillion. Now it's more than doubled. Yeah. So I'm glad you've accepted my arm wrestling challenge. So if you watching this want to see us arm wrestle, all you need to do is go to Kennedy24, KENNEDY 24.com, and you put a backslash, and you type in arm, a little hyphen, and wrestle, and you'll get a page and you can donate. And if the donations reach this threshold, we're going to arm wrestle.
All right. I look forward to it. You'll have to tell me those special exercises you do.
I'm happy to share that with you. I'll give you enough time to prepare for it. All right. Well, best of luck to you on the rest of your campaign, and hopefully things will continue to go the right way.
Great. Thank you very much, Joe.
All right. Bye now. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, hit the like and subscribe button so you can get more videos that can help you and your family take control of your health.